Growing up in 1970s, America meant something specific. It meant station wagons, AM radios, Saturday morning cartoons, and a country that was figuring itself out in real time. And the music? The music ran through all of it. Some of it was joyful. Some of it was complicated. Some of it only makes complete sense if you were there. Here are 17 songs you'll only understand if you grew up in 70s America. Number 17, American Pie by Don McLean. Don McLean was 13 years old when he was delivering newspapers in New Rochelle, New York, and cut open a bundle to find that Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson had all died in a plane crash in Iowa, February 3, 1959, a date he would later call the day the music died. He carried that event for over a decade. By the time he sat down to write American Pie, he was 24 and trying to capture not just that morning, but everything that had happened between that loss and 1970. The result was 8 minutes and 42 seconds of folk rock, the longest song to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 at the time of its release. Them good old boys drinking whiskey and rock. McLean recorded it at the record plant in New York in the spring of 1971. The album came out in October, and by November, the single was on radio. United Artists wanted to edit it down. Listeners kept calling in demanding the full version. By January 15, 1972, it was number 1 on the Hot 100, where it stayed for 4 weeks. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. McLean spent decades declining to explain the song's specific references, though he released some notes when the original handwritten lyrics sold at auction in 2015 for over $1.2 million. If you were a kid in 1970s America, you almost certainly knew every word of the chorus before you understood what the song was actually about. Number 16, Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver. In the spring of 1971, John Denver was building a career in folk music when 2 friends, Bill Danoff and Taffy Nivert, brought him a song they had started and couldn't finish. They'd been playing a late set at the Cellar Door Club in Washington, D.C. Denver heard what they had, added his own ideas, and the 3 of them finished the song together that same night. Dark and dusty, painted on the sky. It was released in April 1971 on Denver's album Poems, Prayers, and Promises and reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. In Canada, it went to number 1. It sold over 1 million copies in the United States on its first release. Country roads, take me home. There is an irony worth knowing. Bill Danoff later said he had never actually been to West Virginia when he wrote it. The imagery came from a drive through Maryland. The state of West Virginia never let that detail get in the way. In 2014, the legislature officially designated Take Me Home Country Roads as one of 4 official state songs. Yesterday. For anyone who grew up in 1970s America outside of a big city, the song carried something that most popular music couldn't reach. The feeling of belonging to a landscape, of a place that held you even when you weren't sure you wanted to stay. Country roads, take me home. Number 15, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? In 1970, Marvin Gaye was one of Motown's most commercially successful artists and one of the most personally devastated. His close friend Tammy Terrell had died that year. His brother Frankie had come back from Vietnam changed. And Gaye was increasingly at odds with Berry Gordy, who ran Motown as a smooth commercial operation with little interest in political commentary. Obie Benson of the Four Tops brought Gaye a song he had co-written with Al Cleveland, inspired by footage of police beating demonstrators at a 1969 peace rally in San Francisco. Gaye took the song, reworked it, and made it the center of the most important album of his career. Gordy didn't want to release it. He thought it was too political, too uncommercial for radio. Gaye reportedly told him he wouldn't record another song for Motown if the label didn't put it out. In January 1971, it was released. By March, it had reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart. In 2 days after release, it sold over 100,000 copies. The album What's Going On followed in May 1971. Rolling Stone named it the greatest album of all time in its 2020 updated rankings. For young Black Americans navigating a country that was changing slowly and unevenly, the song was not a political statement at a safe distance. It was the sound of the world they were actually living in. Number 14, Superstition by Stevie Wonder. In 1972, Stevie Wonder had just renegotiated his Motown contract, gaining creative control no other artist at the label had held. The 5-year run of albums that followed would redefine what American popular music could do. Superstition came from the first of them, Talking Book. Wonder was in the studio while an engineer set up microphone levels, and he sat down and started playing a drum pattern himself. The groove arrived quickly. He layered the clavinet, keyboards, and bass himself. British rock guitarist Jeff Beck was working with Wonder at the time, and Wonder offered him the song as a gift. Beck recorded his own version. Motown released Wonder's version first in October 1972. It reached number 1 on the Hot 100 and number 1 on the R&B chart in January 1973. Wonder won the Grammy Award for Best Rhythm and Blues Song for it in 1974. The driving clavinet riff that opens the track is one of the most recognizable sounds in American popular music. Unlike much of Wonder's ballad work from the same period, Superstition was raw and immediate. The sound of something being played before it became a calculation. Number 13, Take It Easy by Eagles. In the spring of 1972, Jackson Browne had started writing a song and gotten stuck on a verse. His friend and neighbor Glenn Frey heard what he had, finished the verse, and a specific image ended up in the lyrics. Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. Winslow was a real place, a small Route 66 town in Navajo County. The city later erected a bronze statue of a man on a corner in tribute to the song, and the intersection became a tourist destination. Take It Easy was released in May 1972 as the Eagles' very first single. It reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100. The Eagles had just formed around Frey and Don Henley, who had been part of Linda Ronstadt's backing band before deciding to go out on their own. David Geffen signed them to his newly launched Asylum Records. Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy. The song set the Eagles' template from the first day: country-influenced rock, close harmonies, California imagery, and a philosophy of ease that appealed to a generation tired of the turbulence of the previous decade. For anyone who drove American highways in the 1970s with the radio on, it remains as close to the perfect sound for that experience as anything the decade produced. Number 12, Ramblin Man by the Allman Brothers Band. The Allman Brothers Band had built their reputation almost entirely on the road, famous for shows that could stretch 3 hours, for improvisation, for a sound rooted in the black musical traditions of the American South, while being performed by a racially integrated band at a time when that still carried real weight in the South. Ramblin Man was written by guitarist Dickie Betts, though Greg Allman sang it. Betts wrote it about a life he knew personally, constantly moving, constantly working, passing through. It was recorded for the 1973 album Brothers and Sisters, the first album the band completed after losing both Duane Allman and bassist Barry Oakley in separate motorcycle accidents in 1971 and 1972. Brothers and Sisters reached number 1 on the Billboard 200. Ramblin' Man peaked at number 2 on the Hot 100 in November 1973, the highest charting single of the band's career. For anyone who grew up in the American South in the 1970s, the Allman Brothers were something close to the house band of the region. Their music acknowledged where it came from and didn't sand it down for a wider audience. Number 11. Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. By 1974, Bruce Springsteen had 2 albums out on Columbia Records, and neither had sold. The label had promoted him as the next Bob Dylan, setting up expectations the records couldn't meet. He started writing Born to Run in early 1974 in his rented cottage in West Long Branch, New Jersey. He said the phrase came to him while sitting on the edge of a bed playing guitar. He heard a dense, orchestral wall of sound production in his head and spent 6 months trying to get it onto tape. An early version was sent to progressive rock radio stations in late 1974, including WNFM in New York and WBCN in Boston, and began building an audience before the full album existed. The Born to Run album was released August 25, 1975, peaking at number 3 on the Billboard Top LPs chart. The title track reached number 23 on the Hot 100, his first top 40 hit. 2 weeks after the release, Springsteen appeared simultaneously on the covers of Time and Newsweek, the first recording artist ever to do so. In 1979, the New Jersey State Assembly voted to designate Born to Run the state's unofficial youth rock anthem. The bill did not pass the state Senate, partly because the lyrics are about wanting to leave New Jersey. Rolling Stone ranked it number 27 on its 2021 list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. Number 10. Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd began recording Wish You Were Here at Abbey Road Studios in January 1975. The Dark Side of the Moon had changed everything around them 2 years earlier. Roger Waters later described the new sessions as very laborious and tortured. The band members often felt like they wanted to be somewhere else. That feeling gave the album its theme, absence. The title track was written by Waters and David Gilmour together, partly as a tribute to Syd Barrett, the band's founding guitarist whose mental decline had forced him out of the group in 1968. During the recording session, something improbable happened. Barrett walked unannounced into the studio while the band was working on music written about him. Most of them didn't recognize him. He stayed briefly, left, and they never saw him again. The album was released September 13, 1975 in the United States. It had 900,000 advance orders, the largest for any Columbia Records release at that time, and reached number 1 on the Billboard 200 in its second week. It has since sold over 20 million copies worldwide. Gilmour has called the title track a very simple country song. He's also called it one of Pink Floyd's finest. Both are true. Number 9. Night Moves by Bob Seger. Bob Seger had been recording since the early 1960s and was enormously popular in Detroit and across the Midwest. In 1976, he sold out the Pontiac Silverdome in front of 80,000 people. The following night, he played in Chicago to fewer than 1,000.
In the sweet summertime.
The catalyst for Night Moves was a film. Seger saw American Graffiti in 1973 and walked out thinking he had a story of his own to tell about growing up in Michigan in the early 1960s, about a dark-haired girl whose boyfriend was away in the military, about that age, and how it returns in memory. He spent 6 months getting the song right, then recorded it quickly at Nimbus 9 Studios in Toronto with local session musicians because his Silver Bullet band had already gone home. The album Night Moves was released in October 1976. The title track debuted on the Hot 100 in December at number 85 and climbed to number 4 in March 1977, his first top 10 hit nationally. The album eventually sold over 6 million copies. His best-selling studio record, Sager built two meanings into the title deliberately: the moves of adolescence and the way the night itself moves in memory, arriving unexpectedly when you're older, in the middle of a quiet moment. For anyone in their 40s hearing it in 1977, it was immediately accurate. Number 8, Hotel California by Eagles. Don Felder was sitting in a rented Malibu beach house in July 1975 when he came up with the guitar figure that would become Hotel California. He called it Mexican reggae. By the time Don Henley and Glenn Frey had written the lyrics, it had become something else. A song about a place that was beautiful, impossible to resist, and impossible to truly leave. The Eagles recorded the title track 3 separate times at 2 different studios before they were satisfied. It was released as a single on February 22, 1977, entered the Hot 104 days later, and reached number 1 in May. The album Hotel California, released the prior December, eventually sold over 42 million copies worldwide. At the 20th Grammy Awards in 1978, the song won Record of the Year. The guitar solo that closes it, a 2-minute exchange between Felder and Joe Walsh, was voted the best guitar solo of all time by readers of Guitarist magazine in 1998. Henley has called the song a journey from innocence to experience. None of the Eagles, with one exception, were from California. Walsh was from New Jersey, Frey was from Detroit, Felder from Florida. They were writing about a place they had chosen and arrived at. That may be exactly why it captures both the promise and the strangeness of California so clearly. Number 7, Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac. In early 1976, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks were ending their relationship. John and Christine McVie were going through a divorce. All 4 of them, plus drummer Mick Fleetwood, continued working together through the collapse of both couples. The result was Rumors, released in February 1977. Go Your Own Way was the first single, released in December 1976. Buckingham wrote it. Nicks has said over the years she felt some of the lyrics directed at her were unfair. She recorded it anyway. It reached number 10 on the Hot 100. Rumor spent 31 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard 200, won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 1978, and has sold over 40 million copies worldwide. The 1970s had one of the highest divorce rates in American history. The culture around personal reinvention and independence was at peak intensity. Go Your Own Way was being broadcast directly into that moment from people who were actively living the same thing. What made it unusual was that they were still showing up to work together. Number 6, Stayin Alive by the Bee Gees. In the summer of 1977, producer Robert Stigwood called the Bee Gees at a studio in France. He was working on a film about New York's disco scene and needed songs. The movie still didn't have a title. All he had to describe it was a magazine article. The brothers wrote 5 songs for the film that weekend. One of them was Stayin Alive. Stigwood initially wanted a song called Saturday Night. The Bee Gees pushed back and kept their own title. The song wasn't planned as a single. How Deep Is Your Love was the intended lead. But when trailers for Saturday Night Fever began running with Stayin Alive playing over John Travolta walking through Brooklyn, fans started calling radio stations and RSO records, requesting it immediately. Released in December 1977, it reached number 1 on February 4th, 1978, and stayed there for 4 weeks. The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack sold over 40 million copies worldwide. Prior to Thriller, it was the best-selling album in music history. The song's tempo, around 100 beats per minute, matches the recommended pace for CPR chest compressions, a fact medical trainers have used for decades. Barry Gibb described it as being about survival in any big city. Robin Gibb said it was specifically about New York. It has outlasted disco on its own terms. Number 5, Night Fever by the Bee Gees. While Stayin Alive became the more iconic image, Night Fever was the song that dominated American radio longer in the spring of 1978 than anything else that year. Released as the third single from the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, it debuted at number 76 on the Hot 100 and climbed to number 1 on March 12, 1978. It stayed there for 8 consecutive weeks, the longest run at number 1 for any single in 1978. During 5 of those weeks, Stayin Alive held the number 2 position. For 1 week in March, songs written by Barry Gibb occupied 4 of the top 5 positions on the Hot 100. It was a level of chart presence that had previously only been matched by the Beatles. Barry's falsetto ran smoothly across the song's full length, rather than arriving as an accent, which gave it a sustained, effortless quality that set it apart from most pop of the era. Billboard ranked it number 38 on its all-time top 100. For anyone who was inside an American discotheque in 1978, the song is not just a memory, it is a physical one. Is a number 4, The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. Don Schlitz wrote The Gambler in August 1976 at age 23, working the overnight shift at Vanderbilt University's Computer Center to support himself. His father had died that year. He later said he didn't fully understand where the song had come from until months after finishing it. He spent 2 years trying to get it recorded. Bobby Bare eventually did, but the version was never released as a single. Schlitz recorded his own version in 1978, which reached number 65 on the country chart. Producer Larry Butler, who was working with both Johnny Cash and Kenny Rogers simultaneously, gave Rogers' version the release. Rogers put it out on November 15, 1978. It reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, number 3 on the Adult Contemporary chart, and number 16 on the mainstream Hot 100. Rogers won the Grammy for Best Male Country Vocal Performance in 1980. The Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry in 2018. The song inspired 5 made-for-television movies starring Rogers, the first airing on CBS in 1980, each driving renewed attention back to the recording. Schlitz was able to quit his night job and went on to become one of Nashville's most respected songwriters. Number 3, Le Freak by Chic. On New Year's Eve 1977, guitarist Nile Rodgers and bassist Bernard Edwards had been invited to Studio 54 in New York by Grace Jones. When they arrived, Grace Jones had not notified the staff, and the doorman turned them away, twice. Their previous hit, Dance, 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 was playing inside the club at the time. They went back to Rodgers' apartment nearby, had some champagne, and wrote a song about what had just happened. The original chorus was not freak out, it was considerably more direct. When it came time to record the song, they decided they couldn't say that on the radio. Freak off sounded terrible. Freak out worked. And the song was born. It was released in September 1978 on Atlantic Records and became the first song ever to reach number 1 on the Billboard Hot 103 separate times, selling 7 million copies. Billboard ranked it the number 3 song for all of 1979. The Library of Congress selected it for the National Recording Registry in 2018. Rodgers and Edwards went on to write and produce major hits for Sister Sledge, Diana Ross, David Bowie, and Madonna. The night Studio 54 turned them away was, by any measure, one of the more expensive mistakes a doorman has ever made. Number 2, I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor. In 1978, Gloria Gaynor was having a genuinely difficult year. Her mother had died. Her former manager had squandered her earnings and left her in debt. She had fallen during a performance and woke up temporarily paralyzed from the waist down, underwent spinal surgery, and spent 3 months in a back brace. While still recovering, Polydor Records informed her they weren't renewing her contract. Songwriter Freddie Perren had written I Will Survive with Dinho Fakaris a couple of years earlier, inspired by his own experience being fired from Motown Records. The song had been sitting unrecorded because no suitable singer had come along. When Polydor hired Perrin to produce a cover single for Gaynor in 1978, he agreed on the condition that she also record his song as the B-side. The label released it as the B-side. Gaynor and her husband personally took copies to Studio 54 DJ Richard Kazor, who played it for the crowd. The response was immediate. Other DJs started requesting copies. Radio stations began picking up that side of the record over the intended A-side. Polydor re-released it with the sides flipped. By March 1979, I Will Survive had reached #1 on the Hot 100, where it stayed for 3 non-consecutive weeks. It won the Grammy for Best Disco Recording in 1980, the only year that category was awarded. The Library of Congress added it to the National Recording Registry in 2015. It has sold over 15 million copies worldwide.
I just walked in to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed.
Number 1, Piano Man by Billy Joel.
Son, can you play me a memory? I'm not.
Billy Joel arrived in Los Angeles in 1972 in a difficult position. His debut album had failed. He was trapped in a bad contract with his original label. To avoid being found by his management while lawyers worked out a solution, he lived under a pseudonym, Bill Martin, his first and middle names, and took a job playing piano at a bar on Wilshire Boulevard called The Executive Room. He did it for 6 months, night after night playing whatever was requested, watching the regulars, John the bartender, Davey, who was in the Navy and came in on shore leave, Paul the real estate agent who claimed to be working on a novel. Joel confirmed that every character in the song was a real person he'd observed in that room.
But it's sad and it's sweet and I knew it complete.
Columbia Records signed him after a live radio performance of another song, Captain Jack, broadcast on Philadelphia station WMMR, became the most requested track in the station's history. His first Columbia album, Piano Man, was released November 9, 1973. The title track peaked at number 25 on the Hot 100 in April 1974. It is written in 3/4 waltz time, unusual for a pop song. Piano Man was added to the National Recording Registry in 2015. It has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has ended nearly every Billy Joel concert since 1973. The song did something simple. It paid careful attention to the people in ordinary rooms. That turns out to be enough.
Son, can you play me a memory? I'm not.
17 songs, 17 different corners of the same decade. Some of them were joyful. Some of them were working through something hard. Some of them just caught a moment in American life and held on to it long enough for the rest of us to recognize ourselves in it. If one of these brought you somewhere specific, a summer, a person, a car ride, a version of yourself you haven't thought about in a while, leave it in the comments. It'd be great to hear. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. There's more of this coming. Thanks for watching.